Welcome to On Mission with Proclaim Cuba. Last year you embraced Cuba. This year we invite you to connect. Connect with Cuba is more than a theme, it's a calling. As we walk forward in our 10-year vision to establish empowering centers across the island, we want you to see, hear, and feel the life-changing work God is doing. Through the voices of those who have gone before, you'll hear firsthand stories of faith, mission, and transformation. Stories that will inspire you to deepen your own connection. So lean in, listen closely, and discover how you can be a part of what God is building in Cuba. This is On Mission with Proclaim Cuba.
Hello. I'm your host, Andrew Wishmeyer, one of the team members here at Proclaim Cuba. Today on the show, we welcome another adventurous soul, Deborah Tarlton. Deborah went to Cuba a few weeks ago with members of the Colleyville Rotary Club, and they started in Santiago de Cuba, and they ended in Havana, where she was actually able to visit our almost completed Empowering Center. We can't wait to hear about your journey, Deborah, so welcome to the show.
Good morning. Thank you.
All right. It was great to be here. So, as we start this show, we usually ask people to tell us a little bit about yourself and your family and your church family. So we'll let you go ahead and do that.
Okay, great. I started going on mission trips when I was living in Stillwater, Oklahoma. And my daughter, I have one child, she now lives in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And soon she will graduate and be a medical laboratory scientist. I have not taken her on any mission trips. Maybe I'm a little more adventurous than my daughter. I'm not sure. I've been to Guatemala and the Dominican Republic on mission trips. And then I decided to go with the Rotary Club on this trip because I knew they were ending up in Havana.
Yes.
And I knew you had an empowerment center in Havana. And a good friend, Dr. Funderburk, had told me all about Proclaim Cuba.
Yes.
And he attends the same church where I attend in Colleyville called Cross Creek.
Great.
And then he said, well, you need to talk to Andrew. And I think we had some phone calls, maybe text messages back and forth. And then once I was in Havana, I actually used WhatsApp. Actually, Dr. Funderburk called me and said, what have you done? I said, well, I haven't seen the Proclaim Cuba Empowerment Center, but I think I'll go my last day here. And I ventured out on my own. There were 17 people in the group, but I went by myself.
You are brave. You are very brave. I applaud you for that. Good for you.
I felt very, very safe first.
Yeah.
Everywhere we were in Havana and in Santiago and in Trinidad, the people are very friendly in Cuba.
Mm-hmm.
They are happy to see you, and they're especially happy if you spend money there.
Well,
and
that's
I
true.
spent a lot of money there.
Their economy is based on tourism. I mean, that is the industry that they have, and so it's very welcoming for tourists, and we're fortunate from that respect because we go a lot.
Yes, the southern part of Cuba where we started is very agricultural, so it reminded me of my grandparents who lived on a farm.
It is nice. I was fortunate that when Carlos, our executive director, goes, obviously he knows a lot about Cuba. I always learn something new. Every time I go, God has shown me something new about Cuba. It's always a different trip. And that's one of the things that keeps it very interesting for me. God's instilled in my heart a love for Cuba, but at the same time, I'm always curious about things that I have no idea about and learn things like, experiences, different meals and things that I've had along the years. So that's great that you got to experience that too. And you were telling me a bit more about this bus breakdown that happened. And then how did you get help for that?
They have cell phones,
Mm-hmm.
and they called headquarters, and headquarters sent a bus out. We were actually only 30 minutes away from Trinidad because we were on our way to Trinidad. Again, adventurous.
Right. So why Cuba? Was it primarily Dr. Funderburk had been talking about it and you have an adventurous spirit and so you thought that sounded like fun, or was there any other thing that drew you to Cuba?
Dr. Funderburk has opened my eyes to several organizations, the Navigators
Mm-hmm.
and Proclaim Cuba.
Hmm.
And actually, his dear wife, who passed away 3 days after I returned, she said, Deborah, you need to change churches. Because I had gone on a mission trip with my previous church to Kenya the year before. And I said, I don't have a group of women. It's a huge church where I'm going, but I don't have a group of women. And she goes, oh, all the women in my church, Cross Creek, are just so sweet. So, who can resist that?
That's right.
So I changed churches,
Yeah.
and I thought, well, you know what? She was right about all the women,
Hmm.
and Dr. Funderburg told me about the navigators, and I discovered several of the pastors at Cross Creek have been very active with the navigators. And I thought, well, my goodness, he's been right about everything so far. Maybe I should go to Cuba, because 5 or 6 years ago, a friend of mine went really on just a vacation. And I said, oh, I'll never, never say never. Because I said, oh, I'll never go to Cuba.
Hmm.
They're a communist country.
Right.
Well, and then here I am. I've
And there
been,
you
and I
go.
want to go back.
Yeah. So, how did you feel? Again, you're adventurous spirit, so some people are fine packing for something like that, going into the unknown and stuff. Were you nervous about the trip or anything like?
I wasn't nervous about the trip. They gave us a list of
Hmm.
what to pack and what
Yeah.
not to pack. And one of our group had a separate bag for the donations that we were taking to a Catholic organization there. And the person who put the thing together, besides the tour agents and the travel guide, he had been 7 other times. He goes every year in January of every year. And so I thought, well, he knows what he's doing. He's been there 7 times. I've talked to this Andrew fellow. I don't know what he looks like, but he seems like a nice guy. So I don't know why I wasn't I was excited more than anything to get to see a new place, get to see people. I really enjoy meeting new people and going to new places. But, if I tell you what I saw in Kenya that didn't scare me at all, you really will think I'm just crazy. Because the last day we were in Kenya, we were in a national park where the wild animals just roam free. And for about 30 to 45 minutes, a lion was walking right by our Jeep, which was open, and if we had reached out, we could have touched her. And for whatever reason, I was just enthralled, but not afraid.
Mm-hmm.
And I had the same feeling everywhere I went in Cuba. There's just so many nice people, and they work so hard. One thing that's different that people here, unless you experience it, they won't understand it. The shelves in the stores and the shelves in the pharmacies are almost empty. There's practically nothing on the shelves.
So it's been an ongoing issue with them before COVID, and it continues in even more difficult circumstances afterwards, and the shortage of everything. And I think you got to observe that as well. And it's a good observation, because the average life of Cuban is not easy. Nothing comes easy. So it is one of the reasons that we try to do a lot of humanitarian efforts to try to meet people's needs, but also very much in the context of making sure that that's in a church environment where we can share the fact that none of us have any hope outside of Christ, and that is a shared experience that we have. And so it's very important that we make sure that we're not making people feel less than when we go. We want to make sure that they are built up when we go. The Bible tells us that we are to build up the body of Christ, edify the body of Christ. And so that
And
is our desire.
so now the lady who runs the travel agency has heard of Proclaim Cuba, because she said, where did you go by yourself today? So I told her all about it. And the tour guide, Marlon, knows about it. And my taxi driver, who said his name was Junior, I'm pretty sure that's not his real name. He knows about it, because when we arrived, I said, come with me, because I didn't want him to leave. I wasn't
Yeah.
sure I could find another taxi. And so he came inside the Proclaim Cuba Empowerment Center with me, took the tour with Marjorie and her interpreter, Alejandro. And so he saw the whole place. And I thought, well, he doesn't need the interpreter. He can understand Marjorie. And she took us from the first floor to the second floor, showed us the kitchen that will be a commercial kitchen. And they already had a kitchen that's a very small kitchen just for the workers and the people who are there. And then the third floor is open. There were rows and rows and rows of chairs for them to go and have church.
Absolutely. Yeah. We house a church there, and we have the opportunity to have that space for conferences that people will have. We have Bible studies there. We have children's programs there. We have a medical clinic that's tucked in there as well, and really excited about that. Shortly after you were there, we had a group that was just bringing all kinds of things. We're able to do some medical mission there, work there. And so we have pharmacy. It's really a place that we want to be a ministry hub. And I'm so glad you got to see it, because it has been, we've been working really, really hard on there. By the end of the month, it should be completed.
Wow.
And then we get to move on to our next one. Our vision is to have 16 of those, one in each one of the provinces. They're all going to be different. None of them are going to be like that. But the next one involves a sports complex too. So that's really unique to us, and will just give us some additional opportunities for outreach in different parts of the country.
Now, the one thing that I was surprised about, the tile in the rooms is just beautiful.
It's phenomenal, isn't it? Yeah.
It's gorgeous. And every time I would go into a different room, I would like, oh, that's so beautiful. So I'm surprised it's already finished, because while I was at the Empowerment Center, I asked, will it be finished, in a year or so? And they said, oh no, within 9 months. And now you're telling me it's finished.
Well, and the way that they say that is that there is the renovations part that is finished. There's still some electrical work that needs to be done, and obviously the hanging of the air conditioning units. But generally, from the renovation standpoint, all of that major work has been done, and we'll start bringing teams that can stay there, because it's going to be an incredible blessing for us to have that in Havana. It just really is. Excited about it.
I've told some of the ladies at church, and I told them, I said, you all have to go with me. You have to go back, because they have this area that's a pharmacy, and we need to supply that. We need to,
Go.
because they don't have what we think. We have a CVS and a Walgreens on every corner. I said, it's not like that in Cuba.
We're very grateful, and we would love to have you go back and help with things like that. We have a wonderful partner, Mission Regan in McKinney, that can supply us with all kinds of things that they request. We're trying to create a network of doctors that can communicate here in the U.S. I've met a couple recent Cuban doctors out in North Carolina. So we're trying to create that network to make sure that we bring in what is really needed. Like, there are some things that are just needed every day, and then there's some special requests, like, for instance, insulin. That's one of those things that you can, Mission Regan has it, we can take it in. It doesn't count, even if you have a full bag, it doesn't count as a carry-on, additional carry-on. So I always think that is something that I try to bring in every single time as just an additional piece of luggage that I take. And that has been an incredible blessing to people where, as you can imagine, it's just very difficult to come up with that, being able to do things like that.
Now,
Very helpful.
I was with a very large group, and I think that you asked me, don't take the whole group in a great big bus. So
Yeah,
if I get a few church ladies
of
to
course.
come, like, what's a good size, 3 or 4? I don't want to bring too many.
Yeah, no, that's a good sized group, and certainly we can work with you, and we can help get that together for you and make sure that you have the right number and that you know where you're going. And also we have some wonderful ministry part of our network in Cuba, and I know you went with Rotary, which is a little different. That has more of a business focus to it, and
Right.
ways to help with business. But of course, we have ministry activities, women's ministry, children's ministry. We have things called Saturday schools, which help supplement the school for the kids during the week, and we're able to share a meal with them and share Jesus with them. So it's a really great outreach tool, and they're always looking for help for things like that. So we'd love
The
to
ladies
introduce you to them.
group would love that. Once a month, we have a large number of children in our church. I don't know, 12, half a dozen of us will go into the children's side of the church and get all of the packets ready for the next few weeks.
Mhm.
And we'll spend 3 or 4 hours there and then go have lunch together. So if they knew we could go do children's church in Cuba and
Absolutely.
help there, I think we probably want to have everything in Spanish, maybe.
Yeah, you'll be blown away with the level of work that they do there, because it's just so loving. The kids are so engaged. They love being there. They love being able to be a part of that. And it's part of the DNA of the church. They're very family focused, and we'd love to have you be a part of that. To do that, we're getting ready. We're gearing up for our VBS this summer, where we hope to reach over 25,000 kids this summer across the islands. They're in preparation right now. We're taking down all of the materials that we need for that, and they're training the teachers. This was the first thing that we did last year, was we were able to train teachers ahead of time. What an incredible blessing that was, to be able to do that. So this has really become a wonderful thing on the island. People know that it's now happening, and so they'll bring their kids. Their kids are off from school, and so it's an activity that they get to do. And again, we get to feed people. It's a very joyous time across the islands.
When is that?
That is in July, mid-July. It's very hot down there, so some people who don't do so well with heat may not be the best time to go. But that's when we have that, because again, the kids are off from school. So we've got wonderful women's program that's going on in conjunction with that, with the women and the parents who bring their kids to the VBS. We do a special program for the parents, and so the women's ministry really flourishes during that time, because we get to meet a whole bunch of new people in different parts of the island, and then those relationships are built further during the year as their kids continue to come, and then they too get to come to church. Yeah.
Wanted to thank you too. You told me, Deborah, you might want to use Google Translate while you're there. And I thought, I don't have that. Am I supposed to do something new when I'm in Cuba? Because I didn't think about it in advance. Junior, the taxi driver that had the most beautiful 1952 Chevy I'd ever seen, he had Google Translate. And he did not speak English, but he put the phone in front of me and motioned for me to talk into the phone. And I watched it translate everything I said into Spanish. And I went, oh, I have to get Google Translate now.
It's a good tool, I tell you. I call it a crutch, because my goodness, my Spanish should be better, and so I use these crutches, and obviously it does help with that. We're blessed to have wonderful interpreters on our trips too, that people can be able to use if they don't speak Spanish, and so that we try not to let the language barrier be as big as it could be, and those tools certainly help us be able to connect with others, which is obviously the goal. We want to connect hearts and minds. In fact, our theme this year is Connect with Cuba, because we want people who've been connected to have a deeper connection, and we want new people such as yourself to be able to be connected with your heart to other people who are like-minded and want to serve the Lord there.
Well, everything, even the bus breaking down, was just a blessing, because we would have never met that man
Hmm.
who, while he was fixing the coconuts, he said his brother lives in America.
Hmm.
And of course, his brother sends money home to help.
Yeah.
And many, many people have family here,
Yeah.
and they send money home.
Yeah, it's a necessary part of life. It's very expensive there. The exchange rate is it's just almost insurmountable for the average Cuban, right? They have to have some sort of help, or they have to be able to sell something like cheese. I mean, you see people standing along the side of the road selling cheese or candy or something that they've been able to make from their thing. And so always, and from a Rotary standpoint, obviously, that's doing business like that is good, but it's hard to have small businesses. They do allow those sorts of things. It's called MIPIMA, and it's something that they started a while ago to try to allow people to have small businesses. Hasn't gone exactly great for people. I've heard they may take it back. They may not allow that now. So anyway, it's a challenge, right? It's not like here where you can just start up a business and go for it. They have a lot of limitations when it comes like that. But we've been excited to see things like beekeeping become a business for people, because it didn't cost them anything and they don't have to buy feed for the bees and all the things like that, but they produce honey. So I thought that was one of the most creative ideas I'd ever heard. So I thought that was very amazing to be able to do that.
I'm okay not seeing the bees.
Okay. Yeah, that's all right. They do their thing. We'll just let them be out there in the field and pollinate stuff and do their thing. So now I know, again, you weren't on necessarily a Christian mission this time, but do you feel like God used you in any particular way on this trip? Or is it you feel like he was kind of setting you up for future ministry work?
Both.
Yeah.
Because no one in the group had heard of Proclaim Cuba. No one in the group knew about the Empowerment Center, but everyone who was on the bus after I'd gone heard all about it. The travel guide, the bus driver who lives in Cuba. The travel guide lives in Cuba 6 months of the year. And then the other 6 months, he lives somewhere in Texas. So more people know, and the more people who know, especially if you're building 15 more empowerment centers, the word will spread that, these people have the love of Christ and they don't just keep it to themselves, they share. And we're supposed to do that. We're supposed to love each other and help each other.
Yes, absolutely.
So we weren't just there gawking at the differences, but actually seeing the similarities. We were in a town square, and all the little children were playing hide and seek behind these big potted plants. And I was just like, kids are the same everywhere.
Right.
So
yeah. Well, and I love that and I've talked about this often on the show, just the experience that you have when you're around somebody who's different than you are. It is always a beneficial thing if you have the eyes to be able to say, hey, I want to learn something about this culture. I want to learn something about this people. I want to learn something about this place. Those are things that God opens your eyes and you be able to see a different perspective. And I think that serves us well as members of the body of Christ, that we are able to be around people who are different than us, that we don't seek everything the same in our life, because we recognize that it's beneficial for us. It's a challenge for us at times too, right? Which is a good thing. We grow when we're challenged, and our life is different when we're challenged. If we just do the same thing every single time and always seek comfort in everything, our life is never going to be any different, right? We're not going to be able to experience things or experience even, I would say, the joy of the Lord in serving in different ways, right? I believe there's great wisdom in God telling us that we are to go out to Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, the ends of the earth. All of those things have great value in our life as believers. And so so glad you got to go to a place you'd never been before. And I applaud you for doing that.
And I came back home and told more people, and especially since I would like to go back, I would like to return and take a whole suitcase of medications. We were also told they need powdered milk.
Yeah, so that's an easy way for us to bring a food item in. And so Mission Regan doesn't have the powdered milk, but they do have powdered formula, right? So we take things from there down, but then we supplement that with powdered milk. They have rations, food rations in Cuba. And so that stops for milk, and it's powdered milk, that stops when you're 7 years old. So, I shared with you a story about a pastor that I brought a bag down with one of the groups that I did, and his daughter had just turned 7. And so they liked milk. They thought it was a beneficial thing for them. And so being able to receive a bag of milk like that, which would last for quite a while, I mean, his face lit up like I handed him a bar of gold. I was surprised by that. I didn't understand how valuable that was to them, but it just meant something that we would think enough to bring something like that, which to them has incredible value, and it's not something that they can get easily there. So doing things like that, being aware of and making sure that we're bringing things that are actually useful for people is a big part of our ministry.
I think I said earlier when I returned, Mrs. Funderburk, who I had been help take care of, she passed away, and I thought, okay, God, what do I do with all this time on my hands now? And then I got busy typing up my notes from the trip, and you have a fabulous person on your staff who tweaked them a little bit, made me sound like I was a Pulitzer Prize winning author. It was fabulous, yes. And I have a lot more pictures of the Empowerment Center and videos that I didn't share. I thought, oh, I should have shared those. And now we're doing this. And I thought, my goodness.
And we put your journal. You agreed to let us do that as a
Yes.
blog post on our blog. So I'll just point that out, that on our website at proclaimcuba.org, you're able to go to our resources section, and we have a blog where we post stories that people share, maybe journal entries that they share or observances that they share, and also different stories about culture, about religion there, about music. There's all kinds of different elements of the Cuban lifestyle and culture that we want to also share with people so that they can learn a little bit more
Yes.
about that.
They definitely should learn the difference between here and there when it comes to burials.
Mm-hmm.
That was quite an eye opener.
Yeah, that is interesting, isn't it?
I kept thinking,
Well, you have to expand on that there. So you went to the cemetery, right, in Havana?
yes,
Yeah.
yes, we went to the cemetery where the ashes of Fidel Castro are entombed, and we were shocked to discover, since it's an island, I thought, they only have so much space. We were shocked to discover that very few people are cremated. They're all buried. But they have very, very deep burial plots, and a family will bury someone, and I think it was a year and 2 days later. There's a certain time frame. I wrote it in the journal that a family member or they pay someone will remove the casket and take the bones out and put it in a much smaller container and then rebury it. And that's how they do it.
Yeah, they have to preserve space. I mean, it is a big island. It's the biggest island in the Caribbean. It's 777 miles long, but they still do in the big cities have to conserve space for things like that. So again, just one of those things that you learn about as you go down and are part of being a part of a mission trip and all the things that you get to learn.
That was very unexpected.
Yeah, right. So, Deborah, how do you think you are different today? Is there anything that really impacted you from this trip that I know you've been sharing with people, and I really thank you for that? We're talking about doing a Cuba coffee hour, which we do as kind of an introductory event for people. And that's always available to any small group. If you want to have us do one of those, just let me know at andrew@proclaimcuba.org, and I'll be happy to help set that up for you.
Great.
But yeah, how do you think you're different today?
I'm reminded that we're all made in God's image, and although their political environment is very different from ours, the people are just like us. Many of the people there spoke English very well. Unfortunately, many of their young people want to get an education and move to America. They don't want to stay there. So I think,
It is a problem. Over
yeah.
2 million people have left the island since 2021, and it's a problem.
So I have a lot more knowledge about the Cuban people. I understand now why they need what they need. And I thought I would just go check it out and come home. But I should have known better. Once you go somewhere and you see people who are suffering, you can't just go home. You are changed forever. And I never experienced wanting to return so quickly as this time. And it may be an accumulation of all my mission trips. They're catching up with me, and I'm going, you know, stop and go back, because you helped a little and you can help a lot more. And I hope that some of the women in my connection group, they're called connection groups.
All right. Well, see, that ties right into what we're doing this year.
Exactly. I think what we might do, I hadn't thought about it, what we might do is do the Cuban coffee club with my connection group, and then we'll get them hooked.
Yeah.
And they'll go, oh, this is fabulous coffee.
Yeah.
Let's just go over there.
Right. Well, I always tell everybody, and this is a weird thing, I only drink coffee in Cuba, which is strange, but for whatever reason, I just find it's not bitter there for me. My palate just likes coffee there. And also they offer it to you all the time, which is a very kind thing for them to do. And I finally started drinking it there. I'm like, hey, this is pretty good. So we do that for people, and then we get to share about the ministry, and it's just a fun evening. Our executive director makes the coffee because I'm a big gringo, and so I'm not making Cuban coffee. It probably would not have the same effect. So next time you go, at least give it a shot. It's really good. It's obviously espresso. It's very powerful, but it's excellent. So good. You have been an encouragement on the show today. I know that people are listening and saying, hey, I think I might be able to go and to serve. And thank you for sharing that. We look forward to just being able to introduce ourselves to a few new people within your church. We're grateful that we're now connected to you, and you have been a delight today to talk to. Thank you for sharing your story, your first journey. We know there's going to be many more, and we'll bring you back on when you come back. Okay.
Great. Thank you so much.
Of
It's
course.
been a pleasure.
You bet. God bless you. Thank you.